𝗪𝗡𝗂𝗀𝗋.
We are aware of some texts that were forbidden, at least from the Bible. Why do we have so many, and why are they always, I shouldn't say more interesting. Why is that?
Yes, that's right. They are more interesting, not just because they're the forbidden texts, but because of what's in them that got them forbidden. So at the beginning of Christianity, there was a great kaleidoscope of ideas, experiences, theologies, and texts representing what Christianity was. So that included the canonical texts, and it included the pre-canonical and Gnostic texts. And so if you want to learn about beings who came and did terraforming on a devastated planet, you have to go to the Gnostic texts to hear about the craftsmen. If you want to hear about beings that are not human, not exactly demonic, but they parasite off biological life and can manipulate politicians into behaving in a way that's more aggressive and paranoid and might lead to war, again, you have to read the Gnostic text and read about the archons. If you want to get an idea of the range of stories that surrounded what happened to Jesus before, during, and after the cross, you have to go to the forbidden books to realize there were a number of ideas about that. Or if you go to the Hebrew canon formed roughly as we know it today in the 6th century BCE, but it was a rewrite of earlier stories of Paleocontact, and they were rewritten to become a story of monotheism. Between that and the time of Jesus, there were other writings that were added that sort of were a bridge between that thinking and international thought, or Greek thought as it was known. And so some other books were written that began exploring ideas of spiritual experiences, angelic beings, demonic beings, us as eternal beings. These were new ideas. They're not in the original Hebrew canon. The idea that we might pre-exist this material experience and then go on to another kind of experience after, that was in all these new books. So they got excluded as the Hebrew canon was redefined by the Jewish community in the Christian period. And after the Reformation, the Christians limited the canon as well to get rid of some of those because those ideas were a bit too interesting. And I think one of the most interesting exclusions was in the definition of the Hebrew canon that decided the Book of Enoch wouldn't be in it. And if you want to know what's in the Book of Enoch, it's easy to find. It wasn't burned, thank goodness. It wasn't buried in the desert and lost like the Gnostic text. It was buried in the desert for its protection, because after Emperor Theodosius, non-Orthodox ideas were more or less illegal, and then it resurfaced after the Second World War. But during all that time, you could have just taken a trip to Ethiopia and read one of their Bibles, because they kept the Book of Enoch in it. Well, whether you buy one off Amazon or you go to Ethiopia and read one of their Bibles, get into the Book of Enoch, and it won't take you long before you work out why it wasn't included. And that's because it's quite developed in the ideas of what contact with non-human visitors meant in the deep past. And I've mentioned beings like 𝗪𝗛𝗋, 𝗪𝗛𝗂𝗯𝗲 teaching us farming, but there's actually a rich cultural exchange described in the Book of Enoch, whereby these beings come who are described as watchers. They teach our ancestors which plants are good for food, which are good to avoid, which are good for medicines, which are good for higher consciousness. But they also teach them to dress more interestingly, to wear makeup, and to start wearing adornments. And you realize the whole human experience is being enriched by this contact. And it gives a lot more layers to the story, which is only glancingly referenced in Genesis 6 as a story of visitation and hybridization. So a lot of Christians are aware of that. And some Christians have a notion of a populated cosmos because Genesis 6 mentions these non-human hybridizers. But I love the Book of Enoch. It really is a fascinating book. It is an ancient book. It's written by an ancient person with an ancient worldview. But in the thought forms of the day, he's trying to process experiences and cultural memory using the language that he had available, we can read that today and say, I think I know what he's telling us. This is Paleocontact. This is cultural exchange with another civilization.